Hey there, it's Silver. This is Yomi 2. So if you only pay attention to the video game space and not other kinds of gaming, you might be thinking, what the heck is this? Where was Yomi 1? I don't even know what that is. Well, that's because this is one of the rare times that a game has sort of changed mediums in between entries, which is extremely rare because Yomi 2 is obviously a digital card game. It is a video game, but Yomi 1 was a physical card game that you actually went and bought at a store and played on a tabletop. So we see digital conversions of like board and tabletop games all the time, but having an actual full-on sequel to one of those be exclusively a video game is very rare. So what Yomi actually is really interesting because it's a fighting game in card game form, and I don't mean that it's like a card game about fighting. I mean it's like an actual fighting game, like a traditional fighting game, but using cards. So pretty much all of the normal stuff that you would expect from a one-on-one fighting game is here in some mechanical form, but represented through cards instead. So things like projectile attacks and throws and blocks, both high and low, and dodges and specific character mechanics and super meter and all that stuff is actually here in card form, which is a really neat concept, and it is a game that I'm not very good at. I'll go ahead and warn you right now. The footage in the background is not going to be some high skill play. It's going to be me fumbling my way through learning multiple characters and being not particularly good at it, but that's kind of how I am in traditional fighting games as well anyway. There are games that I enjoy on a casual level that I've never been like super amazing at. As far as game modes go, you've got a story mode, an actual career mode where you play the card game against other people in various different venues of increasing complexity and difficulty. As you go up, the AI will get better and better, of course, and you can enter tournaments and actually place in those tournaments and try and get a good win-loss ratio and all that stuff. So it does have a fully featured single-player mode already in the game, which is super cool. You've also got single-player matches versus bots, so if you just want to fight an AI directly, you can do that. And you've also got a training mode, of course, as well as a really good tutorial, actually, that does a very good job of teaching you how it all actually works. And then, of course, you've got various online modes, because, of course, this is a fighting game, so you can play other people, and that's where the meat of your enjoyment is going to come from if you're a more traditional fighting game player. You're going to want to set up tournaments and fight people online and all that stuff. So how does it actually play? Well, it's actually really neat because it, like I said earlier, it basically takes all of the traditional elements of a real fighting game and cardifies them in some way. So the way that it starts out is you have a main phase where you can play an ability card. Characters have an ability card that represents something that they can do, something special, something sort of unique to them. And you can also do some other things like exchange a card. This is very important, by the way. I learned a little bit earlier how important it can be, where you exchange certain kinds of card, like blocks and dodges and things, for any other card in your draw pile except for supers and things. So you can use this to sort of get your hand looking more like you want, effectively. You can also do some exchanges for powering up. There's a power-up option, and the power-up means you take a card that you have two of in your hand, anything that you've got a duplicate of, and you can basically sacrifice them, discard both of them, in order to do something super related. So you can either get 2 super meter, you can have up to 3 meter at any given time, or you can get 1 super meter but also draw one of your supers. So every character has 2 different supers that they can draw, and this guarantees you one of them of your choice. So that's a very powerful option. And then the combat turn itself starts, and each player plays a card. And of course, you won't see what your opponent has played. It will be invisible to you, or well, it'll be face down. And you have to respond with something that you think is going to win out. So if they played an attack, maybe you play a block so that you don't take any damage. Or if it's a particularly powerful attack, it might do chip damage, because that is represented in this game as well. Every attack will have a damage value in the top right, and it'll also have a smaller damage value in a blue shield to show you how much damage it does on block, if it actually does any. If your opponent is being more of a turtle and is constantly blocking, then maybe you want to play a throw. That way you can actually break them out of the block, just like you would in a fighting game. If someone's blocking too much, you punish them by throwing them. And you've also got some other stuff like projectiles, for instance. Projectiles are, of course, things that are used at range, and this game represents that by making it to where they sort of win against melee attacks. If you throw out a projectile, you may be able to avoid their melee attack and instead hit them from range, although you don't tend to get combo follow-ups with a projectile, but it is just like in a fighting game, it's a way to poke, right? It's a way to do a little bit of damage at range that's safe, and it does do that exact thing in this game as well. And if you do actually hit with an attack, then that acts as a hit confirm, and you can follow up with a combo. And every attack has a letter that represents like A, B, C, and down to X, Y, Z at the end. And you can combo in that order. So if you hit with an A and you have a B in your hand, then you can combo it up with a B. And if you have a D after that, you can do that. And you can keep going down. And there are, in fact, some characters, or one character specifically, Valerie, who can combo in any direction. She can actually combo up. So this is just like a normal traditional fighting game where there will usually be one or two characters that can actually do that. They can combo up their combo chain instead of just down like most characters. But you also have a limited number of combo points. That's different from character to character, and each attack takes up a certain number of points. So this is, of course, to prevent you from having basically infinites and doing like ridiculously long combos that insta-kill an enemy. So you are limited as to how many cards you can follow up in a combo. But there's quite a lot of variety in terms of the various combo attacks that you can do because of this system of just having to link them in order. That means you can kind of, go down the chain, and there are also some combos that are finishers, so that they will automatically end a combo chain as soon as you play them, but they also tend to be very high damage, and they're the kind of thing that you want to set up for on purpose so that you can do that kind of big damage at the end. Every character also has, of course, supers, like I mentioned, and these take all sorts of forms. Some of them are projectiles, some of them are normal attacks, some of them are counters or dodges. They're all sorts of supers, and you do get super meter by doing combos, but you also get super meter, like I mentioned, by discarding pairs of cards that you have. So you got to use these sparingly because meter does take a little bit to get, and the meter is spent as soon as you play the card, which means whether or not you actually needed it, like if you played a super dodge and you didn't actually dodge anything or something like that, it doesn't matter. It still spends the meter. So you've got to be careful about using it. Attacks and throws also have a little stopwatch symbol in the top left with a number in it, and the higher that number is, the faster the attack comes out. This is to show you basically having like plus on block and stuff like that, like in a normal fighting game. If you've got like say a speed 11 attack and the enemy uses a speed 8 attack, then you win because your attack hits faster and confirms, and theirs doesn't quite get out in time. And they've even got the concept of being unsafe on block. That's also simulated in this game. There are some attacks that usually the ones that are very slow, they're unsafe on block. They have this little red caution symbol, and if they get blocked, then the enemy gets to punish you with one attack. They don't get a full combo, but they do get a punish. In addition to all of this stuff that each character has, there's also the gem system, which is pretty cool. Everyone can choose a gem before battle, and everyone has the same choices of gem, but they add their cards to your character's deck, so this allows you to sort of accentuate a character's deck with something else. So maybe if you're playing Valerie, for instance, you want to use the red or the blue gems because both of those give you a relatively fast projectile, and Valerie does not have a traditional projectile. She has one projectile that's a super, but she doesn't have a normal one that she can use more often. So using one of those gems is a really useful thing on her because it gives you a more reliable projectile option. But each gem adds like 4 different cards to your deck, usually a couple of each, except for some of the abilities, which it only adds 1 of. And each of them also does have some sort of active ability that is usually quite powerful, as well as something called a gem storm, which you can do from the main beginning phase each turn if you want to. And the Gemstorm is only usable once per battle. You can only do it 1 time, but it usually lasts for an entire round of both opponents' hands, and it's usually very powerful. It might do something like, for instance, limiting how much damage you can take. So if you feel you're on the back foot and you're losing and you're against something that might feel a bit overwhelming, like your enemy has a bunch of super and you're afraid what they're going to bust out, that you may not have the options to do it, you can activate the Gemstorm of that particular gem, and then you're limited to, say, 10 damage, and anything over that just gets deleted, basically, so that you can only take a maximum of 10 damage for that one turn, and it might save you. So this means that the characters that are currently in the game, of which there are 10, I believe, they're quite varied. They all act very differently and have completely different decks, and the fact that you can accentuate all of these with one of the 6 different gems means that there's a lot of variety when it comes to how to play each character. And each character does have a sort of theme, right? Like some of them are rushdown, some of them are grapplers, that sort of thing, but even within that theme, each character is different enough to where they all have some sort of strange effect. Like, for instance, there's one character that can poison you. He is a man with a very funny voice, and he can actually poison you, and the poison sucks. It makes you take damage every turn unless you hit him, so if he's sort of playing carefully, he can dodge and block and stuff a bunch of times and keep poisoning you. Even though he's not doing direct damage to you, he's still ticking down your health in the background unless you can hit him, which makes him very infuriating. And I believe the full version of the game is going to double the roster up to 20 characters, which is very exciting. I definitely want to see what ideas they have, because so far I've noticed that the characters not only are varied, but they're all really interesting. Like, there isn't a character that I don't enjoy playing in this game. I've tried all of them at least once just to see what they were like, and they're all fun, in my opinion. They all have their own playstyles, they all have their own sort of different ways to use the various gems, and they also have quite a lot of unique mechanics in their supers and their activatable abilities and things that makes them all just different and interesting. So knowing the quality of the characters that are currently in the game, I'm definitely excited to see what the full roster is going to look like when eventually that is added. I think Yomi 2 so far is a very promising start for a really interesting concept of a game. It is something that I think a lot of people are actually going to jive with if they let themselves try it. A lot of traditional fighting game folks are probably going to appreciate how detailed the mechanics in this game are when it comes to simulating a real-time fighting game in a turn-based card format. You know, I think people that are familiar with that genre are going to be amused by how much detail there is when it comes to making sure the mechanics line up and actually represent those games properly, because it does a very good job of having pretty much all the mechanical depth that you would expect a fighting game to have, just in a turn-based deck builder format. And also, I should mention, by the way, because I know the term deck builder kind of confuses people sometimes, this isn't exactly a deck builder per se, because you don't unlock cards. Every character has their full repertoire available from the beginning, so you don't have to worry about unlocking random cards or anything like that, or like slowly improving a character's deck. None of that happens. As soon as you start playing a character, they have everything. Just like in a fighting game, all the stuff that they can do is at your fingertips. You just have to learn how to use it. So yeah, so far I'm very interested in Yomi 2 because it's just such a unique concept that I'm sort of enthralled by the idea of a fighting game, but not quite. I think it's just super cool. So I will put the link in the description below this video to the Steam store page for the game so that you can check it out yourself. Highly recommend it if you are a fan of card games or if you're a fighting game fan, because I think there's enough here for both parties to find a fun common ground, and you can, invite your friends to play and have some fun matches and see how it is for you, because I think there's going to be a growing community when it comes to a game like this as it updates and adds more and more characters, and people find their favorite archetype of characters in the game now and want to learn how to use it and all that stuff. I think it's going to be one of those good communities that's fun to interact with and has a lot of knowledge and tips for newbies and stuff, and a lot of like Discord servers where people are like hosting newbie friendly beginner servers to help teach people and all that kind of stuff. It feels like one of those games. So yeah, I'm definitely interested, and I'm excited to see what the full roster is eventually going to look like. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.